Let me start with something that may shock you. When I was deeply involved in witchcraft, we never attacked people randomly. We never wasted spiritual energy. We always looked for permission. And permission almost always came through objects inside the home. I remember walking into houses that looked clean, peaceful, even prayerful on the surface. Yet spiritually, they were wide open. Not because the people were evil, not because they were cursed at birth, but because they unknowingly hosted items that carried agreements with poverty spirits. Back then, we didn't call them poverty spirits. We called them consumers, spirits that slowly eat opportunity, drain momentum, delay favor, and keep people working harder while earning less. These spirits don't steal loudly. They bleed households quietly. I've watched families pray, fast, sow seeds, and still stay stuck financially, not because God ignored them, but because something in their home was legally inviting resistance. That's why this message is urgent, because the enemy does not need to curse you when you are already cooperating unknowingly. If you've ever wondered why money comes in but never stays, why promotions pass you by, why your efforts feel heavier than other people's, this is not about blame. This is about awareness. Tonight, I'm exposing three specific objects that witches look for when assigning poverty and why removing them shifts the atmosphere immediately. Stay with me, especially the third one. Almost everyone has it, and almost no one suspects it. One of the greatest lies modern Christianity absorbed is the idea that physical things have no spiritual weight. That belief made witches very successful. In the occult, objects are anchors. They hold frequency. They preserve intention. They function as legal points of contact. That's why altars exist. That's why charms exist. That's why sacrifices exist. A home is not just a shelter. Spiritually, it is a jurisdiction. And whatever you allow inside that jurisdiction either agrees with, with heaven or negotiates with hell. When we targeted a household financially, we didn't start with people. We started with items. Because if the environment agrees with lack, the people will eventually follow. Prayer becomes harder. Motivation fades. Hope shrinks, and money develops wings. So let me expose the first object. This one opens the door quietly. Broken appliances, cracked furniture, old electronics that no longer work, things shoved into corners with the thought, I'll fix it someday. In witchcraft, broken objects represent stalled flow. They symbolize interrupted provision, delayed repair, and normalized dysfunction. When these items remain, they signal to the spirit realm that lack is acceptable here. We used to say, if a house tolerates brokenness, poverty will feel comfortable. I remember entering a home where the family was constantly borrowing money. Nothing dramatic, just always short. And when we walked through the house, there were at least 7 broken items being saved for later. Spiritually, later never comes. Those objects create an atmosphere of postponement. They train the mind and spirit to expect delay. And poverty thrives in delay. This doesn't mean you must be rich to be free. It means you must refuse to host stagnation. If something is broken and cannot be repaired soon, remove it, release it. Break agreement with someday. Here's something we understood very well in the occult corners collect spirits. Corners represent ignored spaces, places unseen, untouched, and unmanaged. When clutter gathers in corners, it becomes a spiritual nesting ground. Poverty spirits hate light. They hate movement. They hate intentional order. Clutter doesn't just block space, it blocks flow. Financial flow, mental clarity, spiritual sensitivity. I've watched people receive prophetic words about wealth while living surrounded by clutter that legally resisted that word. God releases seed, but clutter blocks soil. Clearing space isn't about aesthetics, it's about authority. This one is heavy. There are objects in homes that carry emotional residue, items given by people who hurt you, manipulated you, or drained you, gifts connected to betrayal, abuse, or deep loss. In witchcraft, we used emotional attachment as fuel. Objects connected to pain made assignments easier because the soul was already tied. Poverty spirits often enter through unresolved emotional debt. That necklace from a toxic ex, that furniture from a season of constant lack, that item you keep because it was expensive, even though it carries grief. I'm not saying every old gift is evil. I'm saying unhealed attachment creates access. We used to place poverty assignments on emotionally charged items because they stayed longer. People wouldn't throw them away. Healing requires discernment. Ask yourself honestly, does this object represent freedom or survival? One of the hardest things for people to hear is this: sentimental value does not cancel spiritual influence. An object can hold memory and still hold bondage. When people asked me why their finances improved suddenly after decluttering, my answer was simple: they broke silent agreements. You don't need to burn your house down. You need to remove what anchors you to past pain. Poverty feeds on unresolved seasons. This is the most dangerous one. Decorations, art, statues, symbols, quotes, or imagery that glorify struggle, mock wealth, or celebrate lack disguised as humility. Phrases like, money is the root of all evil, rich people are greedy, we're just surviving. These aren't jokes spiritually, they are declarations. In witchcraft, symbols are contracts. They shape belief. Belief shapes outcome. I've seen homes filled with crosses and scriptures, yet also filled with symbols that cursed prosperity daily. You cannot speak abundance while decorating lack. What you honor visually, you empower spiritually. This is where many believers get confused. They pray harder, they fast longer, but the atmosphere remains resistant. Prayer releases power, but authority requires alignment. If an object is speaking against you continuously, prayer becomes maintenance instead of breakthrough. We knew this. That's why we focused on environments, not just individuals. Jesus said, "A house divided cannot stand. Your house must agree with your prayers." Let me expose something. We knew an assignment succeeded when bills increased suddenly, the unexpected expenses appeared, motivation declined, opportunities felt almost reachable but never landed. If you've experienced constant almosts, this message is for you. Poverty is rarely dramatic. It's repetitive. Removal is not enough. Replacement matters. After clearing, speak alignment. Pray intentionally. Declare order, provision, and obedience. Open windows. Let light in. Move furniture. Shift atmosphere physically. The spirit realm responds to movement. When we removed objects in deliverance sessions, resistance often broke instantly. I didn't leave witchcraft to entertain fear. I left to expose strategy. The enemy is not creative, he is legalistic. Remove his permissions, and he loses ground. God wants to bless you, but he will not violate spiritual law to do it. If this message stirred something in you, don't ignore it. Walk through your home prayerfully. Ask God to highlight what no longer belongs. Be bold enough to release it. Break agreement with poverty. Refuse silent sabotage. Your house should preach abundance before your mouth does. If this exposed something, share it. Someone else's breakthrough is waiting on this truth. You are not cursed. You were just uninformed, and now you're free.